what you can't explain. It's coming back again. I can see it now, I can see it now. What you can't explain, coming back again.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, and thank you for joining me for another coffee and crime time. So here we are in my new recording space. I know a lot of people, the last video I had, you had some issues with the coloring of the background and the emptiness of the background, but I told y'all, I said, we're working on it. So hopefully you like this better. We got some stuff back there now. Just make it more interesting, make it more homey, warm. Dale Cooper's back. On that side, not this side. Just looks like this side of my screen. He's back. The books, all my awesome true crime books are back there, in case I have to reference anything. But yeah, like I said, we are working on it. We're sort of perfecting the setup, and hopefully you like it now. And there's a few more elements we're going to add, so just bear with me. All right, let me know in the comment section what you think so far. So today's case is it's a crazy one, and it takes us to the exclusive Alamo Heights neighborhood in San Antonio, Texas. Alamo Heights is a town of about 7,000 residents, and with a median income of $152,000, it is one of the richest neighborhoods in the state. In 2023, an online real estate company, Home Snacks, wrote, quote, "You either have to strike Texas gold, be related to the Bush presidents, or have a bank account like Jerry Jones to live in our top 10 richest cities in Texas," end quote. And Alamo Heights was ranked third on their list. Another website claimed that Alamo Heights is a vibrant and affluent community, known for its picturesque neighborhoods, tree-lined streets, and a blend of old-world charm with modern sophistication, exuding a sense of elegance and community spirit. The area has beautiful homes, top-rated schools, and plenty of locally owned boutiques, restaurants, and cafes dotting its walkable and safe streets. Essentially, Alamo Heights is the last place you would expect to see as the setting for a true crime case. But here we are, talking about 51-year-old real estate agent and mother of four, Suzanne Simpson, who lived with her family in this neighborhood and who went missing on October 6th, 2024, and who is now presumed dead. Suzanne's husband, 53-year-old Brad Simpson, has since been arrested and charged with her murder, and there is now plenty of evidence that suggests a high probability that Brad is absolutely responsible for taking the life of his wife of 22 years. So we're going to go over all of it, but first, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, June's Journey. The holiday season is fun, but it can be stressful. It can add to the stress already placed on you by work and family demands, and so I really love using June's Journey to unwind at the end of the day or during a quick break midday, or even while I enjoy my morning coffee at the start of the day, because June's Journey is both relaxing and challenging at the same time. June's Journey is a free-to-download hidden objects mobile game where you have to find hidden objects, but the objects are hidden within these beautiful, colorful, and carefully crafted scenes. It is such an aesthetic. And the game is genuinely transportive, taking me back to one of my favorite eras, the 1920s, the Roaring '20s. Each new scene takes you further into a thrilling murder mystery story that sets the main protagonist, June Parker, on a quest to solve her sister's murder and uncover her family's many secrets. There is so much to do in the game, from going through each chapter, finding hidden objects, to designing, decorating, and remodeling your mansion and garden island. And depending on what you're into, you can play solo or join a team. There's always something new and exciting happening in June's Journey, like special competitions and events where you can earn in-game prizes. For instance, this December, June's Journey is launching the Jack's Festive Delivery Challenge, where you can take part in festive challenges and in-game events throughout the month to recover lost presents, unlock exclusive rewards, and make this holiday season truly unforgettable. Not only that, but you can transform your island into a winter wonderland with a brand new winter Christmas decoration set available until December 31st. So you get to relax and slide, or should I say slay, play into that Christmas spirit. I've been playing June's Journey for years, and I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. It is by far my favorite mobile game, and I never feel like I wasted time while playing it. I always feel more relaxed and more mentally stimulated afterwards, even if it was just 5 minutes. And you can download June's Journey for free by clicking the link in the description box or using the QR code, which has been on the screen. June's Journey is available on iOS and Android mobile devices as well as on PC, and I will admit, although I'm an Apple girl, I did get a PC for my office specifically so I could play June's Journey on the big screen because, like I said, it is just so beautiful and fun, and it's just very visually appealing. It's a really pretty, well-crafted game. Well-designed game. I love it. It's gorgeous. It's fun to play. It's challenging enough where you don't feel like your brain's just turning to jello, but it's not too hard where you feel stressed out while playing it. It's just a great experience. I highly suggest you check out June's Journey. Once again, you can click a link in the description box or scan the QR code that is on the screen. Thank you so much to June's Journey for sponsoring today's video, and let's dive into today's case. From what I can tell, Suzanne Simpson was a successful real estate agent who, along with her husband of 22 years, Brad, had 4 children aged 20, 18, 15, and 5. And it is a little confusing because many sources state that Suzanne only shared her 2 youngest children with Brad, and that her 2 oldest children came from a prior relationship, but the oldest child is 20. And Suzanne and Brad were reportedly married for 22 years, so that doesn't really make sense. Maybe this will become more clear at some point. However, Suzanne's oldest daughter, Chandler, who does refer to Brad as her father, she described her mother, Suzanne, as a woman with a bright smile who had the ability to converse with anyone and who could also make a wicked good meatloaf. Suzanne was selfless, a devoted wife and mother who always put others before herself, and she had the ability to remain positive and lighthearted, even in the face of disappointment. Chandler described it as, quote, seeing the flowers amongst the garbage, end quote. Suzanne had built and maintained an outstanding career as a real estate agent, but she was also very attentive and nurturing parent to her 4 children, who she allowed to be their own people, always supporting them endlessly in following their dreams and passions. Now, Brad Simpson, on the other hand, he sort of seems to be like a bit of a con artist, a slimy kind of person who couldn't necessarily be trusted, in my opinion. And where Suzanne was driven and hardworking, it comes off as if Brad was maybe trying to make a quick buck in the easiest and sleaziest ways possible. Allegedly, like I said, just my opinion. Don't come from me. Brad's exact job title is a bit unclear. I'm not sure exactly what he did to earn money. He's been referred to as a real estate agent as well, or a property manager, an investor. And according to the San Antonio Express News, Brad has been an investor in numerous real estate ventures and construction projects. And he's been linked to at least 15 Texas companies, most of which have since gone out of business. But 4 of his LLCs are still active, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Now, for 10 years between 2002 and 2012, Brad worked as a property manager for Cotter & Sons, a San Antonio company that owned several office buildings. The owner and founder of Cotter & Sons, James F. Cotter, was a real estate tycoon who owned 66 properties across 6 states, including the Twin Alamo Towers along the Northeast Loop 410 and 2 petroleum towers on Tesoro Drive. Court records show that Brad Simpson got in some legal trouble with the company while working for the company, and this resulted in a pretty nasty legal dispute with James Cotter. Now, the timeline and going on of things are a bit complicated, so I'll try to break it down as best I can. In 2012, a janitorial company called BJ Core sued Cotter & Sons, claiming that they had negotiated a cleaning contract with the company through 2 men, Brad Simpson and James Cotter's son, who's also named James Cotter, but his name is James Val Cotter. And apparently, both Brad Simpson and James Val Cotter claimed to be vice presidents at the company. So when Cotter & Sons failed to pay for BJ Corp's cleaning services at 10 office buildings, Cotter & Sons was sued, and BJ Corp said it later learned that neither Brad Simpson nor James Val Cotter had the authority to make or sign such contracts. In addition to suing the company for the unpaid contract, fact, BJ Corp also went after Brad and James Jr. for fraud. Now, the following year, in 2013, Cotter & Sons filed its own lawsuit against Brad Simpson, saying he had ripped them off years prior. So Cotter & Sons is the company he worked for. Now, what it seems like happened here is in 2009, Brad Simpson had formed a cleaning company called Premier Facility Solutions of San Antonio. He formed this along with James Cotter and another gentleman. He then hired his own cleaning company to handle the cleaning contracts for Cotter & Sons. And basically these contracts were set at a higher than normal price, like an above market rate. So this is an obvious conflict of interest, since Brad would be financially benefiting from this decision and paying his own company more for the contracts than another company would have been paid. So this was not in the best interests of Cotter & Sons. It was in the best interests of, Brad Simpson. Like I said, he wanted to make a buck in the easiest and sleaziest way possible. Allegedly, just my opinion. Now, when James Cotter, the owner of the company, became dissatisfied with how Premier was operating, and he found out that it was actually Brad Simpson who owned this company, he told Brad to dissolve the company and find someone else to do the job. So Brad and James Cotter, who's James Cotter's son, then negotiated the agreement with the president of the company that owned BJ Corp to purchase the assets of Premier Facility Solutions. But the only assets that Premier had were the cleaning contracts with Cotter & Sons. So once again, they financially benefited. I think it was like $100,000. They sold their contracts with Cotter & Sons to BJ Corp. The same day the parties executed the purchase agreement, Brad and James Cotter created new janitorial contracts on behalf of Cotter & Sons. So the San Antonio Express-News said that Simpson engaged in further skullduggery, which is the coolest word ever, and it means deceit or trickery, in case you didn't know. I didn't. I had to look it up. But this skullduggery resulted in Simpson having the parent company of BJ Corp pay the $100,000 for Premier's assets, which, like I said, were the janitorial contracts with Cotter & Sons, who turned around and sued Brad Simpson for commercial bribery and breach of fiduciary duty. The company felt that Brad should be responsible for the damages that BJ Corp was suing Cotter & Sons for. So the case went to trial in 2015, and it was decided that Cotter & Sons should pay BJ Corp more than $930,000 in damages and interest and legal fees, and that BJ Corp should not collect anything from Brad Simpson or James Cotter. The case was appealed to the Texas Supreme Court, and records show the parties reached a confidential settlement in 2018, a year after James F. Cotter died at the age of 83. Now, it's important to know, because we're going to talk more about James Cotter's son, James Cotter, that the elderly James Cotter, when he died, his family, I believe, at this point today in 2024, is still battling over his estate and his assets. Aside from the legal issues with Cotter & Sons, it looks like Brad Simpson has also been sued by American Express twice. In 2019, American Express sued Brad and his company, Live Oak Investments, alleging he had failed to pay over $14,000 in charges made on his American Express Business Platinum card. Based on his spending habits, it appears that Brad liked dining out at expensive restaurants and putting the bill on his business credit card. Now, American Express won a default judgment against Brad in 2020 after he failed to respond to the lawsuit, and the two parties would eventually reach an agreement that Brad would pay back the money in $7,500 increments over the course of 12 months. But in 2020, American Express sued Brad again for over $11,000 in charges made on his Business Gold Rewards card. Like I mentioned earlier, out of all the companies Brad started, 4 of them seemed to still be active, and one of them, Bandina Falls, bought a residential property from Brad's mother, Tommy Deanne Simpson, in 2015. Now, this is a 3-acre property on Highland Drive near the Medina River with an appraised value of $579,000, and the property also includes a 2,600 square foot building. This property is also going to become important, so put a pin in it. So that's what we know about Brad Simpson and his business dealings, which, to say the least, seem, shady as fuck, honestly. He seems to be the kind of person that puts on an image of having a lot of money, of being wealthy. He lived in a very expensive home in a very prestigious neighborhood. But at the end of the day, when you have to make a sort of payment plan with American Express to pay back what you owe them in increments over the course of a year, do you really have that much money? Are you really that wealthy? Or is it all just a facade? Now, let's go over the timeline of Suzanne Simpson's disappearance and what happened afterwards with the assistance of Brad's newly unsealed arrest affidavit. On October 6th, 2024, Brad and Suzanne attended a birthday party at the Argyle. This is a private dinner club on Patterson Avenue in Alamo Heights. A surveillance video showed Suzanne leaving the club with one of her daughters at around 8:30 p.m. She was wearing a dark dress, and she had her hair hanging loose around her shoulders.
On Thursday, police did also release a photo of Suzanne leaving the club showing the outfit she was wearing.
According to a witness at the Argyle, that night, Susan and Brad had engaged in a verbal altercation at the club before she left, and after leaving, Suzanne was seen on surveillance at a local H-E-B, which is a grocery store, and she was there with her young daughter. They were at the H-E-B from 8:40 to 8:51 p.m. before heading home. At 9:15 p.m., a friend of Suzanne's said that Suzanne called her and told this friend that she was coming over. A minute later, at 9:16 p.m., Suzanne called her mother and told her that Brad had physically assaulted her, causing pain to her arm, back, and neck.
Suzanne and I had an opportunity to talk an hour before a lot of this has happened, and I don't understand why and what happened. And I hope someday I'll be able to understand the situation.
You said you had a conversation with her about an hour before she was missing, or the last time she was seen. What was that conversation like?
The conversation was that it all started because she wanted me to take care of her 5-year-old while she went to a party. And so then she decided that she could go to the party after Brad would go to the party, and then she would go, and she could also take the Charlie Ann with her. And then she changed her mind, and when she went to the party, they came back from the party. Now my speculation is maybe the whole thing is alcohol related, because when she got back, she called me up and told me the things that Brad had done to her physically. Well, I came up with an alternative plan for her and hoped that she'd move in with me and have her little toddler go to the elementary school in my neighborhood. I never got to tell her the plan. I don't know what happened. I think Brad at that time had done the damage. I don't know what happened.
You said Suzanne called you and told you what Brad had done to her. What did she say?
Yes, she had told me that he had hurt her arm and hurt her back, and she didn't know quite what she was going to do about that. And so that was the end of that. Brad has always been my friend. I've had high regards for him. I always thought he was a good father. I thought I admired him, and I don't understand what the situation is with him.
Do you think that Brad's responsible for her disappearance?
I agree with that. I don't know if the alcohol that they had at the party was his problem.
Had there been any abuse in the past, any physical altercations between them?
There was one other one that I knew of not too long ago. And I can't really remember too much about that, but after, this is like the next day, Brad and I were together, and I didn't understand, I didn't know this was going on, and I had a little conversation with him, and I said something about, Suzanne said, you hurt her arm and another her back, and then I mentioned there was something else, and he all of a sudden got a little defensive. And so I said, oh, I think I must be mistaken. And I thought, well, maybe I was mistaken. But I think that was the start of this situation. It's hard to comprehend it. It's hard to believe it happened.
So you don't think Suzanne's alive?
I don't think she is, because I have not heard from her. That's the only reason. Nobody's told me. what happened. I've heard a little stuff that what they're trying to do and I've talked with several sheriff people, my story, and it's just unlike her. She was a very positive person. She was a very pleasant person in my life, and when she was a little child, she was just such a joy. And I have a lot of questions that have not been answered. I'll never understand it until I get to really talk to Brad. Maybe he can explain to me what happened to him.
Is there anything you say to Suzanne right now if she could hear you?
Suzanne, we love you. We need you. And we pray for you.
The call between Suzanne and her mother lasted from 9:16 p.m. to 9:24 p.m., and at 9:25 p.m., Suzanne apparently arrived at the home of her friend. Another important detail to note is that at 9:16 p.m., moments after Suzanne got on the phone with her mother, her AT&T cell service was suspended at the request of the subscriber, and according to records, Brad Simpson accessed his AT&T app on his phone at exactly that time. Now, although Brad would later tell police that his wife had lost her phone while at the HEB, witnesses would also later tell police that when Brad was mad at Suzanne, he would often take her phone or shut down her cell phone service and then tell her kids that their mother had lost her phone. Now, it's not clear when Suzanne left this friend's house, but at 10:22 p.m., her phone pinged at her house. At some point between 10 and 11 p.m., a neighbor of Brad and Suzanne's witnessed the couple engaged in a physical altercation outside of their home. This neighbor lived directly across the street in the high-end Olmos Park neighborhood, and he would later tell police that he heard arguing outside of his bedroom window, and the arguing progressively sounded as if it was getting closer to his window. When he looked outside, he saw Brad and Suzanne physically struggling with each other. He said it looked as if Brad was trying to pull Suzanne down by grabbing her upper torso area to gain control of her body. The neighbor claimed that it seemed as if Brad was trying to prevent Suzanne from running away. This neighbor said that he stepped outside of his house to get a better look, and at that time, he claimed he saw Suzanne break away from Brad at one point and run in a westerly direction. Brad pursued her, trying to grab her, at which point the neighbor lost sight of them. The neighbor then entered his home to retrieve a flashlight before going back outside. At that time, when he went back outside, he claims he heard screams coming from a wooded area near the homes. He got scared, he ran back inside. What he didn't do was call the police. So I Googled the address in Google Earth, and here is a Google Earth view of the Simpson neighborhood. 520 East Olmos Drive is the home of Brad and Suzanne. I believe this house across the street belonged to the eyewitness neighbor, and this area of trees would be the wooded area the neighbor heard screams coming from. The neighbor would also tell the police that about an hour after this, after he heard the screams, he saw Brad drive off in his pickup truck, and then Brad returned to the home an hour or so later. Now, according to the arrest affidavit, starting at 11:06 p.m., Brad Simpson engaged in a series of on-off cycles with his cell phone, and this is something the FBI defines as lockdown mode. They say it's an action that is taken by someone who wants to avoid detection. Now, I needed more information about how this lockdown mode would work. I really didn't understand it, and luckily News 4 interviewed Dr. Thomas Hayslip, who specializes in cybercrime investigations and digital forensics.
At 11:06, investigators say they see something interesting. Brad Simpson begins a cycle of putting his phone in what's called lockdown mode to keep it from being tracked, quote, in a manner rarely seen. One of the things that we saw in this case specifically, investigators say the suspect was kind of turning his phone on and off and put it in something called lockdown mode. And they write that that's not something that they normally see people doing, is knowing how to use this lockdown mode. Are you familiar with that? What does that look like for a phone to be in that state?
Yeah, so lockdown really, it doesn't have to do so much with location settings, but it makes it harder for anybody to access the phone. So if you put in lockdown mode and somebody is able to physically get a hold of your device, it makes it very hard to get data out of the device, basically.
Difficult, but is it impossible?
No, it can still be bypassed. It's basically, if your phone gets stolen or lost, an average citizen who finds it is not going to be able to get into the phone or reuse the phone. But law enforcement has multiple tools that it's not foolproof, but oftentimes they can get past the lockdown mode.
So Brad Simpson would do this with his phone from 11:06 p.m. on the evening of October 6th into the morning of October 7th, probably the morning and afternoon of October 7th. So to create a timeline of Brad's movements, law enforcement would use a combination of his cell phone data as well as data from his vehicle, which was a black 2019 GMC Sierra pickup truck, as well as surveillance videos and license plate readers. Now, license plate readers was something I wasn't too familiar with. They've become integral to law enforcement investigations, apparently, and they've been used for over a decade, even though I have to be honest with you, I had no idea how common or how widespread they were, and they're kind of controversial.
Well, good morning. You can take a look right over my shoulder here. This is one of those traffic reader cameras right here along the service drive of the Southfield Freeway. And right now what it's doing is it's scanning every single car that goes by. It's scanning the plate. And, well, Michigan State Police say this pilot program has been proven to be a great success so far.
We've used it probably in 90% of the freeway shootings that have occurred, and we haven't arrested all of them.
These license plate readers were installed in February of this year on Interstate 96 in the Southfield Freeway. They capture every plate of every car that drives by. The plate is then stored for 30 days in a database, and law enforcement can go back and check to see what vehicles were in the area if they need to. These readers are a valuable tool to law enforcement for helping solving violent crimes like freeway shootings, but some remain skeptical, like Rod Karomi.
In that sense, in those purposes, then yeah, they're being used for a good cause, as long as they're not taking that and then using it for other purposes that are unfair to the drivers, Not everybody's always driving with the cleanest records.
They're also used in Amber Alerts and in Silver Alerts when trying to help and find someone who might be missing. Lieutenant Michael Shaw also re-emphasized that these license plate readers are not used for traffic offenses.
They're very useful in looking for missing drivers, especially elderly that may have dementia or something like that. It is a tool. It's not this is the vehicle, this is the one. This is just another tool that leads detectives down that road to actually do their job.
Others that we spoke with, like Lakeisha James, says they are in favor of the license plate readers.
It can be a little bit probably of privacy invasion maybe, but I think the benefit of the crime, the help reduce the crime or solve the crime is better than anything.
Now, believe it or not, Michigan State Police have had license plate readers across the state for about 10 years now, but those license plate readers were specifically used for drug trafficking, and they do hope to have these type of license plate readers around the state in the next 5 or 6 years.
I'm actually a little bit curious what you guys think about license plate readers, because I know we're in the true crime space. So technically, we should feel that license plate readers are a good thing, and they have helped solve a lot of crimes. But as far as privacy concerns go, as far as technologies maybe getting a little ahead of things, maybe the average citizen can get in trouble for things because of these license plate readers. What do you think about that? Pop your thoughts into the comment section below. At 12:33 a.m. in the early morning hours of October 7th, Brad's truck was at an H-E-B grocery store in Almost Park, and surveillance footage showed that at that time there was a large ice chest in the bed of his truck, and nothing else. At 7:53 a.m., Brad, in that same truck, dropped his 5-year-old daughter off at school, and at that time, his truck bed contained a large ice chest, along with at least 2 white trash bags with red drawstring handles. Now, the Simpson housekeeper would later be interviewed and asked what types of trash bags did they use in the home, and she confirmed that they were white trash bags with red handles. Now, at 9:12 a.m., Brad and his truck are seen in the drive-thru of a Whataburger in Bernie, which is in Kendall County, and it's about a 40-minute drive from Almost Park, where Brad and Suzanne lived. At the Whataburger, Brad purchased food using his debit card, and in the bed of his truck, at least 3 white trash bags can be seen, along with that large ice chest, a heavy-duty large gray trash can, and a large, bulky item wrapped and secured in a blue tarp with a silver-colored metal firewood holder placed on top of the tarp. Apparently, the way law enforcement describes it, it was a long object, maybe like body-sized, wrapped up in a tarp. And the affidavit states, quote, "Your affiant is aware that criminals will commonly conceal, transport, or disguise their victims in a manner described above to purposely avoid detection by law enforcement," end quote. So to me, it's clear that the police believed there was a body concealed in that tarp, Suzanne Simpson's body, to be more specific. At 9:53 a.m., Brad was at the Home Depot behind Whataburger purchasing 2 bags of Quick Right cement, an orange Home Depot construction bucket with a lid, a box of 32-count heavy-duty trash bags, 1 30-ounce bottle of Clorox disinfectant spray, and insect repellent. He used cash to purchase these items, right? And why is that important? Well, it's important because, just not long before that, he was at Whataburger ordering food, and he used his debit card because he doesn't care if people know that he ordered food from Whataburger. But he goes to Home Depot and basically purchases a how to get rid of a body starter kit, and he doesn't want people to know that he bought that stuff, so he's going to pay with cash so they can't track it through his debit card. But there's surveillance cameras all over the place, my dude. All right, so he buys all these items. He goes out to the parking lot. And in the Home Depot parking lot, Brad Simpson approached a man who was later interviewed by police. Brad doesn't know this dude, complete stranger. Now, this man said that Brad asked him for directions to the nearest dump in Bernie. And using his own cell phone, he provided Brad with directions to the Kendall County Solid Waste site on Spanish Pass Road. At this time, Brad intentionally powered his phone down, entering that on-off cycle after speaking to the man in the parking lot. But apparently, a license plate reader grabbed his vehicle at 10:07 a.m., and the photographs show the same items in his truck bed as what were captured on the Whataburger surveillance video, along with that box of trash bags that Brad had just purchased at Home Depot. So the affidavit claims that data from Brad's truck showed he was at or near the Kendall County Solid Waste site for some time. A surveillance camera from a local business captured his truck driving away from the dump, and at 11:15 a.m., Brad and his truck popped up again at a Valero Stripes gas station in Kendall County. He purchased gas using his debit card, and then he bought 2 one-gallon jugs of water using cash. Surveillance video at the gas station shows that the white trash bags were no longer in the bed of Brad's truck, but the blue tarp, the firewood rack, and the gray trash can still appeared to be there. Now, it also looked like Brad had changed his shoes from black sandals to cowboy boot style shoes. So he's wearing black sandals earlier in the day, which, that's kind of weird. And then he's wearing boots after he, spend some time at the Kendall County waste site. That's interesting. So Brad's truck then traveled westbound from Bernie to Bandera County. Once again, the blue tarp is still in the truck bed. Brad and his truck continue traveling westbound through Bandera County into Medina, at which point his phone entered, once again, an on-off cycle. Brad was in Medina for approximately 13 minutes before he headed eastbound back to Kendall County. And at 1:41 p.m., a license plate reader captured Brad's truck entering Bernie from Bandera County. At this time, the blue tarp is no longer seen in the truck bed, and the fire rack had changed position. What do we gather from this? Well, Brad goes to this place in Bandera County where he, has a home or a property on the river that he purchased from his mother, or his business purchased from his mother in 2015. A home right on the river, okay? And he had cement and trash bags and all this stuff and a blue tarp that looks like a body. He's got all that stuff when he goes to Bandera County, but then when he's leaving Bandera County and going back to Kendall County, the tarp is gone, all right? So we can assume that if that was Suzanne's body in the tarp, that he got rid of it at some point in Bandera County. So at 3:27 p.m., Brad and his truck are back at the school picking his daughter up. Now, this is a little complicated because I guess Suzanne was supposed to pick the daughter up, but she didn't arrive because, she wasn't able to. And so the school called Brad, and he's like, okay, I'll come pick her up. But Suzanne and Brad's 5-year-old daughter told school officials some interesting things before her father came to get her, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But when he picks up his daughter from school, in the bed of his truck, we can still see that large ice chest and gray garbage can. but everything else is gone. The white garbage bags, the tarp, etc. And then at 4:07 p.m., Brad's truck is seen on surveillance at a car wash where he can be seen cleaning and washing the driver front side of the vehicle as well as the rear left passenger side of the passenger compartment, I believe inside the vehicle. Now, at that time, the truck bed contained only the large ice chest. And when the police would later search the vehicle, they found dried cement patches in the rear passenger compartment, as well as that bottle of Clorox cleaner, the disinfectant that Brad had purchased at Home Depot. Now, apparently by the evening of October 7th, Brad Simpson had not mentioned to anyone, including the police, that he hadn't seen his wife since the previous night. But that night, a group of Suzanne's friends got together to discuss how they had not seen or heard from her that whole day, and how she hadn't picked up her daughter from school, and that was very unlike her. And one of these friends called Brad Simpson to communicate these concerns. The friend told Brad that she was going to call the police, which she did at 9:57 p.m. Brad also called the police 14 minutes later at 10:11 p.m. And when the police talked to Brad that night, because they sent, patrol officers over to his house, he said he hadn't heard from his wife since 11 p.m. the evening before. He also mentioned she'd lost her phone at the HEB. However, the next morning at around 9 a.m., Brad told the Olmos Park police that he had seen Suzanne on the morning of the 7th around 6:30 a.m. before he took their daughter to school. He said he had peeked into the bedroom that Suzanne had been sleeping in, and he saw her in the bed there, sleeping. Now, this obviously contradicted the statement he had made to police the night before. Now, here is where James Val Cotter comes back into the story. So, Brad's old business partner and friend and the son of James Cotter, who had owned the company that Brad had worked for, Cotter and Sons, they've been tight ever since, right? The friends that commit some crimes together and are con artists together, they have a bond that keeps them together for a long time. So at 4:35 p.m., Brad texted James Val Cotter asking, quote, "If you're in Bandera, can you haul ass and meet me at your house? I don't have much time," end quote. Cotter responded, telling Brad he would be there in 40 minutes, and Brad responded, quote, "Okay, make sure and leave all that shit into the pump house, especially the gun." End quote. Now, at 8:31 p.m. that night, Cotter texted Brad saying, quote, "Get over here. I won't tell anyone." He then followed that up with a text that said, "You're my brother." Oh, these two, always keeping it above board, am I right? Now that evening, after this heartwarming text was sent, Brad Simpson was arrested at his property in Bandera County. Remember, this is the same property that we've talked about earlier, the one that his company, Bandina Falls, had purchased from his mother in 2015. For a quick refresher, it's a 3-acre property on Highland Drive near the Medina River, and it has a 2,600 square foot building located on it. So Brad was approached by the Bandera County Sheriff's Office at this property, and they found him standing next to an actively burning fire outside. The affidavit says that Brad did not seem surprised to see law enforcement there, nor did he question or ask why he was being arrested. He also did not seem concerned about his missing wife. He showed little or no emotion, and he once again repeated the story about Suzanne losing her phone at the HAB on October 6th. So law enforcement stated that there were numerous bruises and lacerations on Brad's arms and hands, and when he was asked about the physical altercation that his neighbor had witnessed on the evening of Sunday, October 6th, Brad asked for a lawyer, probably a smart thing. Apparently, however, it was not just the neighbor who had witnessed Brad laying hands on Suzanne. His own 5-year-old daughter had told officials at the school that she had seen her father push her mother and hit her in the face and take her cell phone. And as the police continued to go through the investigation, they would find more evidence that Brad's tendency to assault his wife was not just hearsay. When Suzanne's oldest daughter, 20-year-old Chandler, was informed that her mother was missing, Chandler came right to Texas, right? And she had been a design student at Parsons. She was studying in Paris for a year or so before this happened, but she just so happened to be completing her studies in New York that year. So she was able to take a flight to San Antonio. Now, Chandler said when she arrived, she didn't know what was happening. It was bizarre to her because everyone was acting like nothing was going on and there was really no police presence. She said that everyone, including the police, had seemed to just believe what Brad Simpson was saying. So she took her siblings to the police station and gave them more information about her father, Brad. Now, apparently, the information that Suzanne's children told police clearly helped in securing a search warrant, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Now, Chandler appeared on the podcast of a celebrity psychic, Jonathan Mark, on November 5th. Mark is a celebrity psychic, and throughout the episode, he claimed he was talking to Suzanne Simpson. Whether or not you believe in things like that is your business. It's not what we're really here to talk about. But Mark mentioned something about Suzanne saying that things were not the same behind closed doors as they were in the public eye. And Chandler said, quote, "It's part of the reason why I moved so far away and left. I really don't like the home that I come from. And my mom, I love her so much, but I would say she doesn't have the strongest sense of self," end quote. So Brad Simpson was arrested in the early morning hours of October 9th, and initially he was charged with the offense of assault, family violence, and unlawful restraint. That was for the altercation that the neighbor witnessed on October 6th. And later that same day, Texas Rangers and Olmos Park Police executed a search warrant at the Simpson home, where they noted an indentation on the wall at the bottom of the stairs, a mark that Chandler Simpson claims was made when Brad pushed her mother down the stairs. Now, a search warrant was also executed at the property on Highland Drive in Bandera, where police located a ground-level burn site that had the charred remains of 3 cell phones and a laptop, all allegedly belonging to Brad Simpson. Now remember, when law enforcement first encountered Brad at that property when he was arrested, they found him by an actively burning fire outside. Now, according to Dr. Thomas Heislip, our digital forensics expert, it may not be very easy to extract information from these devices depending on how burned they are.
Yeah, so the phones are going to be a little harder. It really depends if they're not functional at all. It's really hard to get that off them because if the chips have melted or overheated in the storage, chips, little hard drives for the common term. Once they're melted or overheated, it's really hard to get that off them. Now, agencies like the National Security Agency or somebody may be able to do some real high level forensics and pull some data off of them, but general law enforcement is going to have a really hard time getting that data. The laptop's a little different story. It depends what type of hard drive was potentially inside the laptop and how damaged it was, but you would have a much better chance of obtaining some data off of the laptop than you would, say, the cell phones. And it really goes, how damaged were they from the fire?
Only time will tell how successful law enforcement is in recovering evidence from these burned devices. However, the iPhone 14 Plus that was in Brad's possession at the time of his arrest was extracted, and the affidavit tells us that 2 notes were located in this device. The 2 notes were created on October 8th, before Brad's arrest, and they were titled "This Next Life" and "Last Will and Testament." Now, they don't tell you exactly what was said in these notes. I believe that'll probably come out in court. But in one or both of these notes, Brad apologized for assaulting his wife, Suzanne, one time in August of 2023 and again on October 6th, 2024, which in the notes he referred to as the prior night. Also, we found out that in September of 2023, specifically on September 17th, Brad had texted another woman. We don't know at this point what his relationship was to this woman, who they were to each other, but we do know what he said to her. And he said, quote, "I still feel bad about tonight. I never should have grabbed her phone and drove off, but she was so protective of it. My dumbass didn't know her passcode, so I got locked out and had to bring it back. I really have no interest in looking through her phone or anybody else's. These devices are the devil," end quote. No, dude, you're the devil, right? The devices aren't the devil. The device can be there, and you can choose not to look in it. You can choose not to be so crazy, so obsessed, so absolutely possessive and controlling that you need to know what's in your wife's phone to the point where you put in the wrong passcode so many times that you get locked out. And then what it sounds like is Brad and Suzanne were fighting about what she was doing on her phone. And then he grabbed her phone, jumped in his car, and drove away, leaving her wherever. I don't know where they were when this went down, but leaving her there without her phone while he tries to break into her phone. If you can't trust your wife to that extent, my dude, get a divorce, okay? That's it. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is controlling behavior, just insane behavior that we see from so many men in these cases. this controlling jealousy. I need to know what you're doing. I need to know who you're talking to. It never ends well. So from friends of Suzanne's, once again, police were able to find out that Suzanne knew her husband, Brad, would track her at times, often, and he was extremely jealous. What? That's crazy. He drove off with her cell phone, obviously. He's extremely jealous and controlling. And additionally, police spoke to Suzanne's personal banker, who told them that in August of 2023, which is the time that this altercation happened and Brad admitted to physically assaulting his wife, Suzanne had told her banker that Brad was abusive, that he would often take away her cell phone, and when he did this, he would tell their children that Suzanne had lost her phone. And Suzanne also told her banker that if she ever went missing, they should look for her in a lake. And according to Chandler Simpson, her mother was planning to leave Brad and was looking forward to a fresh start in life. Right? Because Brad sensed he was losing his control over his wife, who I believe was the moneymaker in this marriage, by the way. She was a very successful real estate agent. He's over here not paying his American Express bills. Once again, I don't know enough about the case or about Brad Simpson or Suzanne Simpson to actually know that. It's just a sense that I get. And he did not want to lose this public persona he had of being this wealthy, successful, put-together man who lives in this beautiful house in this nice neighborhood with this beautiful family, when his own wife and his own kids said nothing was the same behind closed doors as it was in the public eye, right? He didn't want to lose that. He didn't want to lose that, so he was trying to hold on to her. On October 23rd, another search of the Simpson home turned up one bag of quick-rite cement, so obviously he used some cement. It also turned up a box of heavy-duty trash bags that Brad had purchased at Home Depot, with only 28 of the 32 bags remaining, as well as that gray heavy-duty garbage can and the firewood rack. Now, I'm sure that these items have been or are currently being forensically processed and checked for DNA evidence or, blood, things like that. So the search for Suzanne Simpson brought law enforcement to quite a few areas.
Authorities now focusing search efforts on a wooded area just off a highway outside San Antonio. Authorities combed through a nearby landfill for days, searching for the missing 51-year-old mother of four, but didn't find any trace of Simpson.
This is now considered a recovery effort. Yesterday, investigators continued their search in a landfill in southeast Bexar County. Investigators say they have not found any evidence yet that they can connect to Suzanne's disappearance.
Chief Villegas with Olmos Park Police says Brad Simpson has not said a word to them about where Suzanne could be. He was also transferred to the Bexar County Jail.
He still has not cooperated.
Villegas says they are searching other areas but would not specify where.
There's other properties that we're checking. It's time consuming and we're doing the best we can with that.
Friday morning, one of those places turned out to be in Bernie, right off of I-10 at the Main Street exit. More than a dozen members from the Texas Search and Rescue Group, along with Kendall County Assisted DPS, using ATV drones and canines. The search wrapped up just before 4 p.m. Friday afternoon.
What we did learn this afternoon is that they still have not found Suzanne's body. And for the first time, we actually heard from Brad Simpson's brother, Barton Simpson, who has been outspoken throughout this entire situation through statements online. But this afternoon, he spoke in person. He said Brad is still not cooperating. Suzanne Simpson, of course, disappeared back on October 6th after Brad allegedly assaulted her near her home here in Olmos Park. He filed a missing person report a day later, but on October 9th, he was taken into custody on that assault charge.
It is our sincere hope and prayer that Brad will find the compassion and courage to end his family's suffering by cooperating with the authorities to help us find his wife.
We also learned today that they are searching in the Bandera area for Suzanne's body.
And 2 weeks after Brad Simpson was arrested, another arrest made headlines, that of his business partner and longtime friend, James Vale Cotter. Cotter was arrested at his home and charged with third-degree felony, tampering with evidence with intent to impair an investigation. It's been alleged that James Cotter agreed to hide an AK-47 for Brad Simpson, and an ATF and K-9 team located this weapon in a void in the wall at Cotter's San Antonio home. So although Cotter most likely had a gun safe, he didn't put the AK-47 in the gun safe. He put it in like a hidden compartment in the wall. These people are absolutely bananas to me. So Brad Simpson would also see additional charges come down the line as more and more evidence was uncovered.
We now have a murder suspect, an acknowledgement from authorities that they believe Suzanne is not only dead, but that somebody killed her, and the suspected person is her husband, Brad Simpson. In total now, with this murder charge, his bond amount is totaling $5 million. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of that. So the murder, $2 million. Prohibited weapons, $500K. Tampering with evidence, $500K. Unlawful restraint, $1 million. And assault of a family member, another $1 million. Again, a $5 million bond amount. Today, we got word that he was taken to DPS for further questioning. We saw that convoy of an unmarked unit, DPS, and at least 2 almost parked police officer units leave this Sally Port here. They took off. We believe he was taken to a DPS facility for questioning, and that was around 1:15. At about 3:08, we saw that same convoy come back again with sirens and lights on. They brought him back here. We believe that he was brought back here. We could not get eyes on him because of the tint of the windows, but we do believe that was them taking him and bringing him back. All of that happening in a short amount of time when he has now been charged for murder. Brad's brother and Suzanne's brother-in-law also giving us a statement in regard to this new news. I'll read you a brief summary of his statement, and it starts with, "It is heartbreaking, but it brings our family some peace to know that authorities have gathered sufficient evidence to feel confident in moving forward with charges. This also helps us to come to terms with the reality that Suzanne is no longer with us, allowing us to begin a difficult grieving process and focus on rebuilding our lives, especially for the sake of the children and our extended family." Now, the other part of that, this also comes on the same day that James Cotter, a longtime friend and business partner, had a massive bond reduction. Cotter was facing a bond of $1 million, $100,000 per charge. He is now facing a total bond of $100,000, $50K per charge. His charges are tampering with evidence with the intent to impair an investigation, and his bond conditions also come with no contact with Brad Simpson, cannot possess of a firearm, and must wear a GPS tracking device if he posts bond. We are getting word that is expected to happen sometime today, but the bonding out process is a very long process, so we don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon or later into the evening hours or maybe even into tomorrow, but we do have word that there is a process or an attempt to get him bonded out sooner rather than later. If he does bond out, we believe it'll happen on the other side of this building, and we're also hoping to get a glimpse of him as he is walked out for the first time.
I want to clear something up in this whole thing, though. We don't have any indication that they have found her body yet.
We do not. And something, whether it was a search warrant return, something came into the possession of law enforcement in the last couple of weeks that they believe pushed them over the edge to charge him with murder, potentially have this go to trial without Suzanne's remains being found, which is something that rarely happens in the state of Texas, in sort of kind of starts a clock on them trying to secure enough evidence to make this charge stick, because you can really only take him to trial once for murder. You get one shot at it.
So now Brad Simpson is being charged with murder, although we don't have a body, so that is going to be a difficult case to prosecute. Now, Stephen Gilmore, Brad Simpson's court-appointed attorney, has told the media that the charges against his client are ludicrous and part of a theater to incapacitate him, to keep him in custody. And he says that Brad intends to plead not guilty to all of the charges. Of course he's going to plead not guilty. How could he ever take accountability? That doesn't check out for his character, does it? Now, according to the San Antonio Express-News, Gilmore said that ethics prevented him from revealing what his client has shared with him, but he's basically dismissing everything. Gilmore said that the eyewitness, aka the neighbor who saw the fight between Brad and Suzanne on October 6th, that person's not credible. And if the events happened the way that the neighbor claimed, other neighbors would have witnessed it, or it would have been captured on home security cameras. We actually don't know whether it was or not, by the way, but according to him, it has not been captured on home security cameras and nobody else heard it. Now, specifically, Stephen Gilmore has an issue with the story that the neighbor went inside to get a flashlight and then went back outside after, which is when he heard the screams. And Gilmore said, quote, "That doesn't make any sense. If he was invested enough to get out of his house with a flashlight and follow them into the woods, then he's the kind of person that would be invested enough to then call the police, which he doesn't do. And not only does he not call the police, he doesn't even talk to the police. Once it becomes public knowledge that Suzanne Suzanne is missing, they don't get a statement from him until the ranger goes and talks to him, end quote. I don't agree with this, okay? I don't agree with this at all. And of course, we have to remember that Stephen Gilmore is a defense attorney, so his job is to defend his client and put a filter over events that paints a narrative more in favor of his client. I do think that someone can absolutely be nosy enough to want to know more about a situation, but also private enough to want to mind their own business, to not want to seem like they want to know more. Additionally, the neighbor never claimed he followed Brad and Suzanne into the woods. He said that he saw them kind of going towards the woods. Suzanne was running and Brad was chasing her. And that's when he went inside to get a flashlight. And when he came back outside, he heard screams coming from the woods. And then he got scared and he ran back inside. Now, how many cases have we covered, specifically of child abuse or neglect, where the neighbors knew stuff was happening, right? They knew stuff was going on with the kids in the house. There's cases we've covered where the neighbors are like, yeah, we saw the kids. They would come over for food because they were hungry and they weren't getting enough food. And nobody ever called the police. That's because it's the bystander effect, right? It's a well-known psychological sort of concept where it's like everybody always thinks somebody else is going to take care of it. Somebody else is going to call the police. Somebody else can be the person that interferes. They don't want to be that person. And this seemed like exactly the kind of neighborhood where people minded their own business. It was bougie, everyone kept to themselves kind of, like it was all about the image, all about what things looked like. Now, Suzanne's daughter, Chandler, feels the exact same way, and she's called out the community for staying quiet about the domestic violence.
In a series of social media posts, Chandler Simpson is calling for action. The 20-year-old left heartbroken, a whole month without her mother, who she believes is no longer alive. Now Chandler says her mother was trying to leave the abusive relationship. In a post, she said, quote, "My father took my mother's life in a state of rage and control."
A respectful relationship does not have any room for fear.
Marta Pelaez is the CEO of Family Violence Prevention Services. While she can't speak to this case specifically, Pelaez says abusers are solely responsible for their actions, but there are things the community can do to protect victims.
If we see something, make sure that you call the police. And that is perhaps the only thing and the minimum that we can do that perhaps may save a person's life.
Chandler, echoing the call to action, is urging the Alamo Heights community to speak out about domestic violence.
In part, Chandler's statement read, quote, "Suzanne Simpson was a victim of abuse and a victim of this community. Beyond being a victim, she was a phenomenal mother, hardworking, driven, loving, and kind," end quote. Chandler also called out the Alamo Heights community saying, quote, "Shame on my community for not speaking out about domestic violence. Within Alamo Heights, women are marginalized by society and misogyny every day and are told to keep their mouths shut. This is the time to speak. Speak for my mom. Speak for yourself. Your voice will be heard. My mom fought for her life, fought for her family and herself. Our community needs to come forward with strength and bring awareness and change to uplift women who brought us life. Those who choose to remain silent are choosing to blind themselves from domestic violence in our homes. My mother tried to leave my father and lost her life. If you stand with my mother and our family, please be present at my dad's hearing November 13th and stand with us in silence for my mother. Justice will be served and my mom will be brought home. Shame on Alamo Heights for not educating the youth and community on domestic violence and sexual assault as women across the world suffer in silence as victims," end quote. That's a powerful statement coming from anyone, obviously, but coming from the daughter, the adult daughter of Suzanne Simpson, who lived in that house, who saw what happened behind closed doors, who knew the dynamic of the marriage between her mother and her father, that's very powerful because clearly Chandler Simpson believes, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Brad Simpson is responsible for taking Suzanne's life. Now, a bail hearing for Brad Simpson was originally scheduled for October 15th, but it was canceled after federal authorities filed a detainer seeking to prevent Brad's release. Stephen Gilmore, remember, that's Brad's attorney, he has stated, quote, "What's been said in the media and in the sworn probable cause affidavit and federal complaints are at odds with the truth," end quote. And what he means by this is, as far as law enforcement claiming that Brad Simpson was uncooperative and that he failed to attend a scheduled follow-up interview with the Almost Park police chief, he decided instead to take refuge on his Bandera property, and Stephen Gilmore claims that's not true at all. Brad tried to cooperate. He was the first person to report Suzanne missing. That's not true, dude. We already know, right? Her friend called at 9:57 p.m. and Brad called at like 10:11 p.m. So just by the timeline, that's not true. And Stephen Gilmore said that Brad also agreed to speak to the police chief, but it was the police chief who postponed the appointment 3 times. Stephen Gilmore has said, quote, "The chief of police knows exactly what he was doing. He was stringing Simpson along, trying to make him uncomfortable so he could later state in the affidavit that Simpson was uncooperative," end quote. At this point, Stephen Gilmore is asking for something called an examining trial. So this is a trial before a judge where evidence is presented to determine if there's enough to move forward with a prosecution. And at this time, Brad Simpson remains in custody. However, I'm glad I waited until today to film this video because just today, a few hours ago, there have been updates. So this article says that Brad Simpson has been indicted by a grand jury for first-degree murder. This happened 2 months after Suzanne went missing. It also says on December 3rd, he was also formally charged with second-degree tampering with evidence with the intent to impair a human corpse, third-degree possession of prohibited weapons, and third-degree tampering/fabricating physical evidence with the intent to impair. If found guilty, Brad could be sentenced anywhere from 2 to 99 years or life in prison, depending on the charges he's convicted of. Oh, from 2 to 99 years. So they're basically saying if he's not found guilty of the murder charge and just like the weapons charge, he could be sentenced to 2 years or life in prison. If he's found guilty of the murder charge, which, come on, man, we haven't even gone to trial. The affidavit shows like a small percentage of what the police actually know at this point. And I think it's pretty clear what happened here. I'm sorry. I know that he's innocent until proven guilty. I know he, like every other American citizen, deserves a fair trial in front of a jury of his peers. Dude's guilty. In my opinion, allegedly. Don't come for me. He's guilty. Now, Brad's family, right, has actually cooperated with the investigation. And his brother, whose name is Barton, by the way, Barton Simpson, I can't do it. Bart Simpson, he has basically become the spokesperson for the Simpson family, and he said, quote, "We want to express our profound gratitude to the law enforcement agencies for their tireless work and dedication to seeking justice. Their commitment to uncovering the truth is something we hold in the highest regard. Our family is deeply troubled and heartbroken by the events surrounding the grand jury indictment of Brad for the tragic death of his wife. The details outlined in the case are disturbing and painful for all involved." End quote. So it seems like even Brad's own family is like, yeah, he did this, and they probably know him better than anybody. The statement continues, and Bart Simpson, they actually refer to him as Bart Simpson. His name's Barton, but they do refer to him as Bart Simpson. I'm not just being cheeky. Bart Simpson says, quote, "We urge Brad to do the right thing by fully cooperating with the authorities for the sake of his children and the family who loves him. We ask him to accept responsibility and place himself at the mercy of the court. It's our sincere hope that through accountability, healing can begin for everyone affected by this devastating loss." So at this point, it looks like the case is going to be overseen by the 226th District Court, Judge Vila G. Metza, and a date for his first appearance, Brad's first appearance, is to be set. So basically, Barton Simpson is over here like, Brad, put yourself at the mercy of the court, come clean, just like take accountability for this. And Brad Simpson is like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I don't know how to take accountability for anything. I'm going to plead not guilty to everything and take this shit to trial, where more information will come out that makes him look guilty. Obviously, police believe that Suzanne Simpson is no longer alive, right? Since the night of October 6th, her cell phone hasn't been used, her bank accounts haven't been used, and so there are some people out there, and of course the defense is going to use this like, oh, she was done with Brad, she wanted to leave him, so she just, ran away and started a new life. But how with no money? How without using her cell phone? And why would she leave her children, especially her 5-year-old child, to get away from a man that she could, simply divorce? Or if she knew that he was violent and he wouldn't let her go easily, get an order of protection, go through the divorce process. It's going to suck, but, it's better than leaving your children. Nobody who knows Suzanne would believe ever that she would leave her children. She was an amazing mother. And if she was planning to leave Brad, which I genuinely believe she was, she would have gone through the process of doing that. She wouldn't have just disappeared and started a new life with a new identity and no money. So that's obviously what happened here. Brad Simpson, I believe, is 100% guilty. And here's kind of what I'm thinking happened. We know that the property he has in Bandera County is by a river, right? All right, so the property that he has is on the Medina River. And honestly, with the cement and the insect repellent, I think he put her in the water. And also remember, Suzanne told her banker, if I go missing, look for me in a lake. She's saying, look for me in a body of water. It's very likely that this idiot, Brad, in an attempt to scare her or keep her under his control, had made mention in the past of how he would get rid of a body if he was ever to do that. Maybe not even directly saying like, hey, it's death do us part, my friend. Like if you ever try to leave me, I'm going to weigh you down with cement and put you in the water. But maybe just a sort of casual conversation about like, if I killed somebody, this is how I would get rid of their body. And this is how I would make sure that nobody ever found them. So that's how Suzanne kind of knew, like if I go missing, look for me in a lake. Now, the Medina River, it says, is located in south central Texas. I kind of want to know, how big is it? How deep is it? All right, so this website says the Medina River is a relatively short river, only 116 miles. Its headwaters rise in the springs of northwest Bandera County, flowing southwest through Medina and Bexar counties. The river is crystal clear, with bald cypress trees lining its banks, shading paddlers. The north and west prongs of the river have their confluence in the tiny town of Medina. Is it Medina or Medina? I don't know, but that's where it forms the main stem that runs through the larger town of Bandera, and that's where Brad Simpson's house is. 15 miles further downstream, it forms the Medina Lake. The Medina Lake. Look for me in a lake. Below Medina Lake, the Medina River continues 77 miles to the confluence with the San Antonio River in southeast San Antonio. So yeah, I definitely think that, given the cement and given the insect repellent, Brad took a trip along the river and probably found a good place to put Suzanne, knowing that if he weighed her down enough, she would not rise to the surface, right? And we've covered this in cases before. When it's cold, I believe when it's cold, the bodies fill with gas and then rise to the surface, or it's the other way around. When it's warm, that happens. But either way, you have to make sure the body's properly weighed down so that it kind of just will go along the bottom of the river and then sort of get out into the lake or wherever the river ends, and it doesn't surface, which would then mean that Suzanne's body would be found. And I genuinely believe that Suzanne was put in some body of water, and he happened to be in Bandera County when, he had the tarp. And then when he left Bandera County, he didn't have the tarp anymore. So obviously, I believe that's what happened. But let me know what you guys think about this case in the comments section. It's still obviously unfolding. We're going to have to see if Brad goes to trial or if he does the right thing and takes accountability, which survey says probably not. The odds of that, based on his history, based on the fact that, you would kill your wife and then go to such great lengths to cover it up, allegedly, just in my opinion, kind of state that maybe you're not, really great in the accountability taking department, but we will see what happens. Let me know what you think about this case in the comment section below. Like this video if you like it, share it if you think it's worth sharing, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to be starting up our small business showcase again. I know that, for a while that fell off because there was a lot of things happening, but I would like everybody who has a small business that they want showcased in one of my episodes to email me at stephanieharlowe@stephanieharlowe.com. Tell me about your small business, give me links to it so I can check it out, and then hopefully, we get you guys some sales, some business, some, Stephanie Harlowe followers who really want to support other members of our community. Thank you guys so much for being here. Until next time, stay kind, stay beautiful, and stay safe. I'll see you very soon. Bye.
Once again, don't forget to check out June's Journey. You can download June's Journey by scanning the QR code on your screen now or clicking the link in the description box below.